Hi, I'm Milla and welcome to another Milla's Game Room video. This one is going to be a massive 1 hour marathon where I talk about 25 video games that changed my life forever. Ranging from some of the usual suspects that I talk about on the channel to some games I've not talked about, and not just visual novels and JRPGs. So when you get a cup of coffee, sit back, relax and hear me fangirl about video games. So this is going to be kind of weird because I've got one game at the start which I recorded and then audio had issues at the end, and the ones afterwards right at the end also had issues because of my mic down here moving during filming. So that aside, I'm going to go straight into this. So if you see an awkward cut into filming from last week, then that's why. Starting with the era of firsts. I'm grouping the games into categories, and this one is for, well, games I played first in a specific genre. And why not start with my first JRPG, otherwise known as Dragon Quest XI Sentinels of the Starry Skies. Now, what is this game? Well, putting aside the whole it's the mainline part in the Dragon Quest series, mainline number 9, it is a JRPG where you build your own character and you go out into the world playing the role of a fallen angel who needs to go and collect figs and ultimately work towards saving the world. Now, back in the day when I heard of this game, I had seen the marketing in the UK, which Nintendo at the time, they were really pushing Dragon Quest as a potential household name for JRPGs on the Nintendo DS. It was part of a marketing deal they had with Square Enix at the time to promote some of their games on their behalf in the West, and Dragon Quest was the main franchise that benefited from that. I remember seeing adverts starring many British celebrities, including Jedward, who, well, technically they're not even British, but at the time they lived in the UK, even though now they're Irish and live in Ireland, so. But at the time they counted as British because they were on the X Factor. I remember seeing them having fun with it, and some other celebrities too, and I decided to bite the bullet and pick up the game. Ended up getting it in a shop, Argos, remember when they sold video games? Oh no, they still sell video games, it's game we have to worry about, not selling video games anymore. But Argos were cool, I got the game from there. I literally spent hundreds of hours playing it, where my friends at the time at school, we had this game as well, so we ended up going into each other's grottos via the multiplayer mode, which was fantastic for the time. The multiplayer mode also directly inspired Street Pass, by the way, which is one of my favourite features on the 3DS, so that part of Dragon Quest Legacy is also really cool. But I just fell in love with this world and its characters, its art style, and its gameplay was really good. I really loved the dynamic battle system with the cameras and the camera shots and all the customization you can have for your party. The story was also good as well, obviously given it's quite a plot-light franchise, aside from a few more other titles which are much better than 9, but they're still great. There isn't too much in the way of a story, but it was a fantastic game. I just spent literally hundreds of hours on it. Even my old DSi XL, which I had growing up, is all heavily scratched on the touchscreen because I was using the stylus so much to play Dragon Quest 9, and it's fantastic. I would love to see a remake of this one day, and I think Square Enix will return to this game to remake it once they're done with the HD 2D remakes for 1 to 3. I think this game would be amazing on the Switch too at this point, because let's be honest, it's probably not going to be on the original Switch if they remake it soon. But I love Dragon Quest 9, it's a great game, play it, it's amazing, it changed my life, maybe it will change yours too. And the best part is this is still somewhat affordable, even the US version, but yeah, great game, check it out. Changing genre completely now, we have a platforming game, which was one of my first I ever played growing up, and that was long before Dragon Quest 9 as well, and that's Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights for the PlayStation 2, and also came out for GameCube as well and some other platforms, but I got it on PS2 because let's be honest, if you were growing up on a 7th generation, did you have an Xbox or a GameCube? Probably not, you probably had a PS2. And this particular game is a licensed game, and licensed games were a part of my childhood because, well, I like the characters. And it's really weird to say that now because as an adult, you know that a lot of the licensed games that are being made are just phone grabs. Just put them on phones, kids will play them, and it's like, mobile gaming is big, but it didn't really exist back then. So it was really surreal just playing these games on consoles, and this particular game, you play as Scooby-Doo. You go around Mystic Manor, which has various docklands and hedge mazes and a bunch of other property, all inspired by past Scooby-Doo mysteries from the original show. You have to go around, play as Scooby-Doo, and save Mr. Inc., who were kidnapped by the game's antagonist. and it was a lot of fun. And growing up, it was a really well-made, difficult platformer. And bear in mind, as a kid, so of course if you're playing as a kid, you're going to struggle to play these things, and I very much did struggle to play it. And that was the story of my life with Scooby-Doo 900 Fights. And even as an adult, replaying it more recently, it's still a great game. It's obviously a bit easy because it was aimed at kids, but there's still something really cool and enthralling about it, going around collecting all the Scooby snacks, getting the monster tokens, and just having fun. Especially if you're a fan of the show and the older cartoons from the 70s and 80s, you'll get a lot of mileage out of this one, and I certainly did. It really helped further my interest in the Scooby-Doo show. In fact, the quality of the game is so good that even Metal Jesus Rocks has recommended the game in the past, and that itself speaks to the quality of the game. And also, it's developed by Heavy Iron Studios, who made other games I'm going to be talking about in this video, so that's going to be fun. Scooby-Doo's great, check it out. I suggest emulating it because it'll be easier to get hold of than a physical copy, but physical copies are quite cheap too. Third game of this section, I'm going to be brief because I made a video on it recently, and that's Etrian Odyssey Untold, which was my first Atlas game, one of my first RPGs, and definitely one of the first on the 3DS, and it really, it blew me away because of its immersion and the gameplay, the presentation as well, and the unique cartography mechanics with the bottom screen. It just scratched a huge itch, which I absolutely loved, and the story mode helped as well. The story mode quality, even though it is rough around the edges by modern standards, which I talk about in my video, please go watch it. It did its job, it sucked me in, and it really convinced me to try out more of Atlas's games, and that was amazing. And I became a fan of the Etrian series for life as well, and I can't wait to see more from this franchise and just see all the innovation and goodness. This is the kind of game I love, and even with the fantastic music and presentation, it's just so amazing. These games are great, check them out, and I loved it so much. And the second game as well, Etrian Odyssey 2 Untold, that game's also fantastic. I played that much later though, so not Untold, but definitely later. So that's not in this video, but I would like to cover that on the channel as well at some point. Let me know if you want to see that. In the meantime, go watch my video. Next up is another game I want to cover on the channel at some point, as it was my first Otome game, and that's Bad Apple Wars for the PlayStation Vita. This game is one of 2 Vita exclusive Otome games that are left, as in they've not come to PC or Switch. And Bad Apple Wars is, of the 2 games, the other one's Period Cube, the better received of the 2. In this particular game, you play as Rinka, who is sent into an alternative world halfway between life and death, and to either get out, she has to either join the Bad Apple delinquents or the disciplinary committee. And this was a really interesting game. It introduced me to the Otome game subgenre, and you get to see the dynamics between Rinka and the guys. It was really nice, it was really cute. I really thought the story and setting were really interesting. The music was really cool. The visuals, not as much. I've never really been a fan of Suo, who is the illustrator. I'm just not a big fan of his art style, which is more of a personal thing. Bad Apple Wars was that was so much fun, and I enjoyed myself. And even now, I know a lot of people who've played the game, they do look back on it fondly, and I'd love to see this game re-released for other platforms, even if just a late PC port, because it deserves a wider audience. And this particular game as well, it is one of the cheaper physical Vita visual novels, so if you have the means to, pick it up, it's fantastic. Final one for this section is another first platforming game, and that's Mario Galaxy, my first 3D Mario game. And this game, if you've played Galaxy, you already know what it is. So how did this game change my life? Well, basically, the main thing that really sucked me in is its impact. You go into this world, especially when you're a kid, you blast off into these galaxies, you fly around these spherical planets, you walk on these spherical planets, you do things on these spherical planets, you do various tasks, not on spherical planets either. It just hits so perfectly. The physics, the design, the music, it's just so grand and unique. It was a trailblazing game. And with Galaxy, I remember, the copy I had here is not new. It was a copy I got secondhand because the original copy I got was borrowed because a relative was like, oh hey, my friend said you can borrow this, so I borrowed Galaxy. and I just loved it so much. And I even got Galaxy 2 day one as a result, which, yeah, that game's also good as well. It's not as good as the first game because it lacks the original's impact. Like, there's only so much of an impact you get if you play Galaxy 1 and you just see, oh wow, the 3D graphics, the innovation, it's just so beautiful. And it was so beautiful. And Galaxy 2, you've already had it once, you just don't feel it again the same way. Although it was still really impressive in its own right. I also prefer the first game because the galaxies have got more stars in them. They feel a bit more vast and explorative, where the second one's a bit more linear. And they're both great in their own ways. Like, there are some galaxy stars in the second game that are better because the galaxies are so linear. And the first game, I just feel really hit the right spot for me and became a fan of 3D Mario. And as of 2024, I've now played all the 3D Mario games. And Galaxy is easily still up there at the top of the list, so it's great. If you haven't already, check it out. It did come to Switch as part of the 3D All-Stars collection, so I suggest you just emulate that or pay 70 quid for a physical copy of that if you really want to play it. I recommend it regardless though. So my next stack is going to be the Endless Fun stack. This is a stack of games that have no fixed end. So in theory I could play these non-stop for many years and they'd still be here, which kind of like, well, World of Warcraft and MMOs are Endless Fun, which they're not on here, but that's what I mean by Endless Fun. Starting with Mario Kart Wii, which was my first Mario Kart game and really was my first multiplayer-oriented online game that I really got into. Even then, it wasn't so much at first, the online, it was more about playing with family, because Mario Kart Wii was part of Nintendo's Blue Ocean strategy to make gaming a lot more accessible to various demographics outside of the core gamer bro that a lot of companies have been working towards. You had things like the wheel, you have the wheel, you can just tilt the Wiimote, it was so fun. You've got things like the online multiplayer and all the characters. It felt one of the most like content rich and heavy games for the Mario Kart series, and arguably was before the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe came out on the Switch, where that game has basically blown every other game in the series away in terms of content. But Mario Kart Wii, I just love playing online with Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. It may be dated even back then, but it was still fantastic. For me as a kid growing up playing that, and just as a family, just like, even when I was playing with family, sometimes I played online with them, played offline with them, and just, it was so fun, and just endless bonding, endless adventures. And even as an adult, I've been getting into the Mario Kart Wii hacking scene a bit more in the last few years, with things like CDGP and various other mods that enable you to basically have new tracks on the Wii that at some point fans even surpass Nintendo. Like, there are tracks out there like Shy Guy Lumberco and Bowser's Termination Station that are better than some Nintendo tracks. Like, that's how good the tracks have gotten. They look absolutely amazing, and I just love playing them and just really appreciating what fans can and do make. It's just amazing, and I love it. And just really appreciating Mario Kart Wii, and just, this game is genuinely timeless, and you just love it. It's like, I just love it, and it's still amazing, and it really shaped my love for it, and it's so cool. Another game that's a bit more divisive in its reception, which also came around at the same time, is Wii Music. Wii Music was Shigeru Miyamoto's pet project about bringing people into music and just allowing people to explore music in a more sandbox-oriented way. There was no heavy goals or strict criteria to meet, not an intense rhythm game like Guitar Hero, which was popular around the same time. No, this one was just, you want to make music, let's just have some fun. And that's exactly what it was, and for me, that's why I loved it. I spent like dozens of hours on it growing up, just having instruments with your Wiimote and your nunchuck, and just being able to just play it and have fun. If it sounded terrible, it doesn't matter, because music, it's fun. And I just loved it so much. Even making the records and playing with other people locally, it was just so cool. It only as an adult that I realised that Wii Music wasn't actually received well at the time, which is really strange to me. I don't really know, like, I don't understand it, but I respect it. But I also, I didn't care at the time, and I still love it now. And maybe one day I'll go back to it properly and really get back into it, but until then, Wii Music is great. Play it. Right, next up is going to be another Touch Generations game, which I'm going to be light on the details because it's an exercising game, so I don't want to be too unintentionally triggering to people who struggle with that, so I'm just going to get straight to it. Wii Fit, if you know what this is, you already know what it is. Aside from mentioning that I like the gamification of the exercise, I want to talk about the aspect of the game that really is nostalgic for me the most, that quote-unquote changed my life. And that's Woohoo Island. Now, for those who don't know, Woohoo Island is an in-game world that Nintendo made specifically for the Wii Fit series that later became quite popular among Nintendo fans at the time. If you've played the Touch Generation games or Mario Kart 7 or even Pilot Wings Resort on the 3DS or Smash Bros as well, you have probably played Woohoo Island, this beautiful island resort that people absolutely loved. It was amazing, a lovely little location, and I just loved it. It's just amazing, and I really wish we had more of it in Nintendo games, because after Smash Bros it's basically non-existent in modern Nintendo stuff nowadays. Instead we got Spocko Square for Switch Sports, which is not as good. I like it, but it's not as good, and it definitely lacks the character and world exploration of Woohoo Island. Best part about this is Woohoo Island recently got a unofficial fan mod, which allows you to freely explore the island in a custom-made PC port of the island, which is really cool. You run around with your Mii. I've seen footage of that, it looks really cool, and I'd love to try it out myself properly at some point because Woohoo Island is awesome. So yeah, this is Wii Fit and Woohoo Island. Changing genre and platform completely now, we have a rhythm game. IA Vita Colorful for the PlayStation Vita. So what is IA Vita Colorful? It's a licensed rhythm game starring the IA Vocaloid, the aria on the Planetes Vocaloid that was quite popular in the early 2010s and is still quite popular today, alongside One, which is another Vocaloid from the same developer, First Place. Not as popular as Hatsune Miku. Miku's like the queen, she'll always be the most popular, but IA, pretty close second. I loved IA Vita. The gameplay was fantastic. It's a lot easier than Project Diva. It's still difficult on the higher setting, but not as hard as those games. And it really sucked me into the worlds of Vocaloid and import games, and that was more how it really changed my life, because it got me interested in both those things. I was into Vocaloid music more for a bit after playing the game back in the 2010s, but not really so much now, and that is partly because we haven't really had any more amazing Vocaloid rhythm games in recent years. Project Diva, aside from Mega Mix Plus, is basically gone from the face of the earth now, and IAVT never got a sequel, unfortunately, and that was one of my biggest wishes for the Switch generation that we never got. This game is rhythm free. You can import it from Japan. It plays half in English, because half the menus are literally in English from the beginning. You don't need a patch, and it's just fantastic. I really went into wanting to import more stuff after this game, and it really set my interest, and it's really cool. I'd love a sequel, or at least a port of this game to PC or Switch, but it's not going to happen at this point because it's so old. And First Place seemed to be okay, just letting companies like Bandai Namco put IA music in things like Taiko, which I think is a fair compromise, because you can still have some Vocaloid goodness in Taiko no Tatsujin. The final game for this portion is a game that I've not talked about on here at all, and that's Bin Weevils. Now, what is Bin Weevils? This, if you're a British person and you're watching this, you will probably know immediately what this is. But it's, for those who don't, aka the 30% of Americans who watch my videos, it's basically the UK equivalent of Club Penguin. Now, Bin Weevils is a children's virtual world game. We had a lot of those in the 2000s and 2010s. Margie running on Adobe Flash. You could probably guess where I'm going with that aspect. But this game, you'll play as a weevil based on the real life animals in a cartoon bin. You get to go around, play games, complete missions, build your own nest, want your own garden, maybe even run your own little business, be a bin tycoon. It was amazing. And it was really popular back in the day. I got into it of all the virtual world sites that there were, like Neopets, Club Penguin. Bin Weevils was the one I was most into, spent hundreds of hours on it. It really shaped much of my childhood, and I loved it. It was amazing. And I did also like the whole, something about the whole Bin Weevil vibe of just being in a cartoon bin and having these characters, like these weevils, you do dance moves and just, It was really cool. The site is now officially shut down in 2021 because of Adobe Flash. The site had to close. It's one reason why Club Penguin shut down as well. And I believe there's some other sites that are gone as well because for the similar reasons. There is a fan recreation of it, which I've tried out. Bin Rules Rewritten. That's a really fun little recreation of the game. You don't need to engage with anyone else at all on there. You can just go in as an adult and relive your childhood, which is fun. I liked doing that ages ago when I found out about it. It's a cool revival, so I do recommend checking out the revival project if you're interested. Other than that, it's just a relic of the past really, because unlike Club Penguin, there were never any console games developed for the franchise. There were a bunch of mobile games, which obviously they're mobile games, I never played them. So it's a shame I don't have anything physical on my shelf to represent this franchise because Bin Weevils is awesome. And if you're in the UK, you probably know exactly what I mean when I say how fantastic it was. And while I'm here, I also want to say that I really wish we had more children's virtual world games like Bin Weevils and Club Penguin and sites in general that are just safe for kids to explore and engage online in, because we don't have any children-specific spaces anymore. And this is something that a lot of children growing up now are just not going to relate to. And that aspect of it, there's both the serious side and the non-serious side. But in terms of the serious stuff, I'm not going to that, but the non-serious stuff is like, they just won't have the nostalgia that people my age have, and I really wish they did, basically. Bin Weevils is great, so check out the game. If on the off chance you are a younger person watching this, go check out Bin Weevils Revisited. That's great. Not official, by the way. The actual company who made Bin Weevils is no longer around as well. That's also why they went bankrupt, but let's just move on. Now onto this section I'm going to call Amazing Stories. In other words, the most RPG heavy section of the entire video, which if you know me, you probably already know some of the games that are going to be in this section. And honestly, there were so many games I could talk about that all left an impact on me in terms of story, but I really wanted to narrow it down to some of the core stuff. So I'm going to jump right away with Persona 4 Golden, my second Atlus game ever made, another game that I covered on the channel in its own retrospective video. This game was fantastic. If you don't know how this works, you play as a transfer student who goes to a fictional but realistic rural Japanese town, and you have to go around and find out who is throwing people into TVs and why they end up dead. It is a murder mystery detective story, but it's got some fantastic plot twists, an amazing unique atmosphere, fantastic music, just so memorable. The gameplay is great, and just overall this gripping 60+ hour mystery game with a really beautiful narrative about knowing yourself, and just in general, it's fantastic. And yeah, there are a few aspects of it that haven't aged as well as it has. I've touched on this in my video. Go watch that video. It was one of the first retrospectives I did on the channel, by the way. It's great, but I loved it, and it's really formed a lot of my love for Atlus. And I really began to broaden out away from Square Enix after playing Persona 4 Golden, where because Square Enix weren't localised in Dragon Quest games, I was more interested in other developers, and Atlus was one of those developers. So yeah, I became a massive Atlus fan before it was cool. I recommend that, getting involved in developers that you like and spreading love for them, so then when they finally get cool, you can say, hey, I was involved with that developer's fan base for years, and I can tell you firsthand, they've been amazing for long before you realised it, because that's also fun. And yeah, that's changed my life in that respect. This game is now on all modern platforms, PS4, Switch, PC as well, Xbox, PS5 backwards compatibility. It's great, go check it out. They're the way to play it. There is a limited run physical release, which good luck getting that, but if you can get it, I recommend it. It's a great game. So iconic, so life-changing, Persona 4. Now this next one, I am a fan of the whole series, but I actually couldn't remember too much about the story of the game I originally was going to put here, because it's been such a long time since I played it. And that was the original Xenoblade Chronicles. Now that was like a game that I really stuck with me. Like, it was a game I tried when I was younger. I struggled to cope with it, and then tried it as an adult when the definitive version came to Switch in 2020. But if I had to pick between the three games in terms of the stories, both in terms of how memorable they are and how consistently paced, Xenoblade 1's story is fantastic, even though I don't remember much of it. Xenoblade 2's is great, but largely stacks towards the end when it becomes amazing. But a game that really consistently stuck landing the whole way through, and I remember, is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And this is the best of all worlds in the series. Like, literally, it's Xenoblade 1 and 2's worlds crushed together into this massive continent and a relevant story that ties up the games. It's incredible. I think of all the games in the series, this one is by far my favourite because it just perfected the gameplay loop from the first two games and the open world, or almost open world. There's like 3 massive portions. It's near seamless and it's incredible, and I just loved it so much. And then of course there's a plot twist to Chapter 5, Chapter 6. If you know, you know. I'm not going into details here, just play this game. I did make a ramble video a couple of years ago when it first came out, but that's really crap because I didn't record gameplay, so you literally saw my face for 40 minutes of bad audio quality. If anyone wants to go and watch that, maybe someday I'll remaster it because my thoughts are still the same. Assuming I still remember what those thoughts even are, but you know, I still love the game. That I remember, and that's all I need to know for the purpose of this video because it truly changed my life. I want to go retro for this next one, and this is more a recent pick, but I went for Chrono Trigger. And the reason why I put this one in life changing was this is quite an old game, and one of the things that I struggle with playing older games is because a lot of them tend to be grindy, and they tend to be quite rough around edges because they're quite old games. Whereas with Chrono Trigger, this is the finest of fine wine. It has aged so well that you could play this in 2024 and it would feel like a brand new release. Like, that's how well this has aged, and we'll probably never get anything like this again. Maybe we'll get a remake in the future for HD 2D or whatever else Square Enix want to do, and that would be cool. It showed to me just how much value older RPGs have when they age well, and how much you can love something that truly becomes timeless. And also further spurred me on to play some older games as well. Especially now I've got a Steam Deck, it's going to make playing through older stuff so much more easier, whether it's for the channel or for my own personal library. I want to play more, and Chrono Trigger is one of the games that helped really ignite that. So the next video game amazing story that changed my life in terms of being, well, amazing, brain food, memorable, life-changing, is the Trails series. And I've touched on this before in other videos. Did a couple of Trails videos earlier this year with the Crossbell arc, and plan to do more once I've played through the rest of the games. But for now, I want to talk a bit about my time with the series. First off, back in the day, I'd heard a lot of good things about them, mainly from the Vita community. So you can probably guess I played Cold Steel 1 and 2 first on the Vita. And these versions of the games are good. They don't have turn rewind, which is what I need for accessibility nowadays. Well, no, not turn rewind, fast forward. So these versions are more of a curio in my collection at this point, rather than me actually going to play them again. But I loved them at the time. You get them on the Vita, you could tuck away, you could experience the wonders of Class 7 as they seek to save the Erebonian Empire from its civil war, and you witness the world building on a level that you've not seen in any game to date at the time, and arguably ever since. The Trails series is still ongoing, it is nearing the end. There's nothing quite like going out into the Trails series, seeing all the overlap between other arcs, seeing all these returning characters, just being blown away, and in many ways reminding me like, this is what the potential of RPGs can and should be. A series that's interconnected, a series that even when it doesn't quite stick the landing, and there are a couple of games in this series where that is the case, where you still have a great time, you still love the characters, you can see for yourself just the power of building an epic world. And now that the series is heading towards like Kaino Kazeki and the games after that, the second half of the series, which I'm really looking forward to seeing how it ends. I've been catching up on the series a lot this year because I've been wanting to catch up for some time after playing these. Did Sky FC a couple of years ago, but only this year that I've only began fully ploughing through the games, and the likes of Crossbell and Cold Steel 3 and 4 as well, and of course Reverie. All games that I believe are better than Cold Steel 1 and 2. But Cold Steel 2 is probably a top 5 game in the series for me. I know some fans consider it to be one of the weakest, but I don't agree with that. It's definitely got flaws, don't get me wrong, but it's not the weakest game in the series, not by a long shot. But I had a great time with all these games, and I'm looking forward to being on the Trails ride until it ends. And the best part about being a Trails fan is the JRPG community on YouTube. They love the series too, and it's really nice to be able to bond with people over your love for the Trails games and helping people jump on board to experience more of this amazing world. And it also helped me become a fan of Falcom as well, and Falcom are one of my favourite developers now, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of what they could get up to, like both new and old, because I've still got a bunch of their older stuff to play through, which that's going to be an adventure too. Next section I want to touch on is a brief section I have titled Neurodivergent and Queer Goodness. And oh look, I have one of the games in my hand, which I thought I didn't, but now I do, it's here. Celeste is one of them, my favourite indie game of all time. In this game, you play as Celeste, who climbs Celeste Mountain as she seeks to overcome her demons. And it's got a really nice theme of neurodiversity, mental health and identity, which all relate a lot to me in many different ways. So there's that aspect of the game which I love as it changed me, but also because the gameplay was fantastic. The platforming is very tight, very refined, very elegant as well. Also quite hard, but also with accessibility, so if it's too hard in some places you can make it easy and skip, because that's great game design. You've also got the whole themes of the music. The music for me is on par with the likes of Donkey Kong Country because it's that good, it's so atmospheric and amazing, and I love it. And this physical release is one of my favourite Switch games I've got because this was the rare limited run printing. Well, I say rare, back then it was quite rare, it was the only printing of the game, but now you can get it at retail everywhere on Switch, and I recommend it because it's a fantastic game, and you can get it for like £2 as well if you get it on sale. Like, £2 one of the best games, and this is before touching on all the mods for it, which I've yet to properly explore. Like, that's an absolute bargain. Another thing as well of like the mental health and like deep breathing and just emphasizing self-care and self-acceptance and having people around you that love and accept you is just really cool, and I just love it a lot. I can see why it's become one of the most popular indie games ever made, a true indie darling, because it deserves the title of indie darling. The second game I don't have a physical for, one does exist for the Switch, but I haven't got around to finding it yet, and that's Heart of the Woods. This is a cozy Yuri visual novel with some horror stroke supernatural elements. Well, I say horror, it's more creepy at times, but very rarely. You play as Maddie and Tara, who go to a mysterious village in the woods, Eisenfell, to investigate paranormal sightings for Paranormal YouTube program. So this is an ELVN, so I admit I don't play as many of them as I should. I play a lot of VNs, but most of them tend to be Japanese. And that's partly because they tend to have voice acting, which I find helps my immersion. But Heart of the Woods is an example of a voiced English visual novel. And that's one reason why I love this game, because the voice acting was great. And it really shows that when the companies like have the budget and have the opportunity, English original VNs can really be on par and even exceed Japanese VNs. In terms of Yuri games, I'd say Heart of Woods is probably my favourite that I've played to date, and I've played quite a few Yuri VNs. I still need to play some more of those, but that's for another time. The romance in this game felt so authentic and natural, and it was lovely to see representation. It was just so cool, and it really made me a fan of this developer for life. And I'd already played Heart of Highway Blossoms from Studio Elan at the time, and that's a great game as well. I recommend that. That's currently only on PC, but I still recommend it. Like, check them out, it's great. It's fantastic, go check it out. And just seeing everything and being able to connect this little queer world, this queer bubble, this little presentation, and a great story as well, the brain food, I just loved it. And it really shaped a lot of my love for ELVNs and the desire to play more queer media, and also on PC as well, because a lot of them will not come to consoles. Now onto the more divisive section, because there are a few more games where I feel that, yeah, they've influenced my life, but maybe not all for the better, and it's really hard to describe without going into context, so let's start bringing in some context. And I'm going to start right away with a contentious title, Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 1 for the PS Vita. Now, around the time this came out, it was 2014, I just got on the Vita. There were a few games I had for the Vita at the time. One of them was Persona 4 Golden, but there was also the likes of Sorcery Saga, which I don't have anymore, but I want to get back. And also Muramasa Rebirth, which is a fantastic game. And then next we had Neptunia Rebirth 1, which had just come out in the US at the time, and I imported it. So it was one of my first import games that was in English. And I really got sucked into the Neptunia rabbit hole for a time, like 2014, 15. The reason why was generally the charm, the presentation and the characters. It really showed how like anime aesthetics and that style of game really appealed to me. The characters, the music was great. Compile Heart are great composers, by the way. And just enjoying it, even though the games were not very good. And I feel like I played Neptunia Rebirth 1 and then played another game, Tales of Hearts R, which I put on the shelf as well, not in this video, but that's a great game too. And then Rebirth 2 and 3, almost all back to back. So yeah, I went through 3 games that literally have the exact same battle system, the exact same story and tone, the exact same assets, like literally the exact same assets appeared in all 3 of these games. There's some new stuff obviously, but a lot of assets. It was like, I played through almost 6 months of my life, maybe even more, aside from Tales of Hearts Art, was almost full of literal shit. Literal shit! And this is like, I spent all this time playing this stuff when I could have been playing other gems on the Vita, or even the 3DS, that I've been playing bloody Neptunia, and all there are aspects of the games that I like, there's also a lot that I don't, and I just feel like I've wasted a lot of time, and then I got really sucked into the Vita, partly because I played so much Neptunia. And yeah, I kind of regret that, but I'm an adult now, I know better, and then to spend months of my life playing the same fucking Neptunia game again. And it's weird because at its core, Compile Heart and the battle system used in the Neptunia games is actually good, but they just use it in all their games. They literally squeeze it to the limit, and there's only like 1 or 2 ideas that are actually original. Like Dragonstar Varnir, that it goes all vertical, and I've not played that. And they've got Death End Request, where they combine it with visual novel. That's apparently really good. I've not played that. And other things like Dark Rose Valkyrie, which is, that game is apparently actual shit, but yeah, I wish I didn't actually spend so long in Idea Factory hell with these Compile Art games. The Otome games are another matter though, by the way, so just getting that out there. And then the second one, which is going to be a bit more controversial, which kind of leads on for Neptunia Rebirth 1, is Moe Chronicle. Now, do you know what Moe Chronicle is? Well, you might know the title it was later given when it did actually come to the West, Moe Chronicle. This game is, well, Switch and PC, but it was originally a Vita title. And it was my first import game that I got from Southeast Asia. My first Asian English release. It was really marketed as such. You can get it in Asia with English, and you bought it from there. Sony, of all companies, actually licensed the game over there, and they localized it. It was, yeah, very different world back then. What was I thinking? I don't know. What was I thinking, more to the point? This dungeon crawling RPG, and it's basically a panty quest. Like, it's just like the best way I can describe it, because this story is just complete and utter fucking nonsense. This game was weird. Even back then, it was weird. It was gross. It was not very good. The art and music were probably the best thing about it, because again, Compile Heart are great at presentation, and they are great composers. But gameplay, this was such a bare bones dungeon crawler. It was also one of the most unique games that I've ever played, because one thing you not need to realise with the Vita version of Moe Chronicle, much like the other games in that sub-series, Genkai Toki, you can turn your Vita on its side and then you actually have a touching minigame, which that was quite a novelty for the time, but that's not the kind of thing that you get, and it's like, what the hell was I thinking playing a game like that? And there were some aspects of it that were good, which kept me going till the end. And it's like, why did I waste so much time on this fucking game? Because it's not even very good. But also, with the Vita community, they will jump at the chance to promote new stuff and imports like this stuff. And then there's also the whole ecchi fan service game boom of the 2010s, which was largely concentrated on the Vita, which I was influenced by back then before I knew better, which I would like to go over that whole period in my own video someday, because I actually think that would be an interesting topic, because one, time has passed, people will look back at it differently now. Because it was such an interesting era, and got people like me who, yeah, I played it, yeah, it influenced my gaming taste, because I really liked Compile Art games at the time, although I feel I wasted a lot of time also on said Compile Art games. But it was an experience, and you can get this game quite cheap now on Switch and Steam, so if you do want to check the game out, I recommend getting it on there, or if you really want to play the Vita version, just download it online. Don't even bother going after physical, because like £60+ at least, like 100 quid, which is way too much for a game that is shit. Anyway, finding it quite poetic that my audio started messing up right after I talked about bloody Moe Chronicle, it's time to talk about another series which, while I liked playing them back in the day, I kind of wish I didn't. And that is the SpongeBob SquarePants and Friends Unite crossover franchise. This is a series of licensed games that occurred throughout the 2000s, developed by the original THQ, and mixture developers, mainly Blue Tongue, who made some good games. This is a franchise where SpongeBob SquarePants and various other Nickelodeon cartoons come into one world and fight off evil. This is the third game in the series. It's the only one I have physically at the time of recording, which is fine because it's the best one. I do recommend it. I even played a bit of this on my Steam Deck earlier this year when I got it. It's really good, and you can really... emulation of the Steam Deck is really good, even playing for stuff like this. I really liked these games growing up. It was really amazing seeing these characters all come together and interact, especially like SpongeBob SquarePants and the Fairly Odd Parents, which are the two main Nickelodeon cartoons that I was like really super into. But looking back as an adult, and especially playing the very first game, the original 2005 one, which was called SpongeBob SquarePants and Friends Unite in Europe, and not Nicktoons Unite like in the US. Why that name change? I don't know. I found it kind of dull. Like, the gameplay was very repetitive, it's really easy. There are, like, no collectibles. That was the main flaw I had with the game back in the day, even though I spent literally dozens of hours on it because I got stuck in Vlad's Castle, which, yeah, that level was quite hard if you're a young kid, but I liked it as a kid. As an adult, it's kind of like, yeah. But also, licensed games like this also shaped a lot of my taste back during the PS2 era, and that makes me wish I played other things instead, because the PlayStation 2, or even the GameCube, which is a console I wish I had growing up because, well, it's Nintendo, and so many fantastic games were on the GameCube. But I understand why they had a PS2, because if you don't know much about gaming, it was really PS2 or nothing back in that generation, because there just wasn't much for Xbox or GameCube unless you were already a fan of Microsoft or Nintendo. It meant I played a lot of licensed stuff. I missed out a lot of classics for the time, not just on PS2, but everywhere as well, and I really wish I was able to play through them back then and have more nostalgia, especially because like PS2 is the best generation for JRPGs. Like, you talk to a lot of people and they'll say that the best generation for JRPGs was the PlayStation 2. And based on some of the games I've played from that time later on, I'm inclined to agree that it's definitely up there. I'm not sure I'd say it's the absolute best because I've not played enough of other gens to really comment, aside from modern stuff, but I would like to play more, and I wish I didn't play them, but I do recommend them. I know a lot of people my age and a bit younger as well, we have nostalgia for a lot of these Nickelodeon licensed games, which I think is fair and valid, especially because it reflects the market at the time. Like, we don't get licensed games much outside of phones now, because that's where the market is, and a lot of the people who run companies like Nickelodeon, they don't give a shit about video games. Neither do the executives who run the developers like THQ Nordic give a shit about video games. It makes sense to just have them on phones, but it also means that it's really hard for younger kids to relate to having nostalgia. Like, just like the whole no virtual worlds thing I talked about when I recorded the last bit last week. The kids, they can't relate to seeing licensed console games, and there are some, even Nickelodeon stuff like Game Mill Entertainment, like their shovelware. There is stuff, but it's not very good. I only wish we got some games like, well, Attack of the Toy Bots, the good stuff. And also, I really liked Battle for Volcano Island as well. It's really short, but the setting was cool, and it's still one of the best ones across the series, I think. Globs of Doom was interesting. That's quite a unique game. But the main reason why I wasn't the biggest fan of it was because Timmy Turner was not included at all. Like, no references, no nothing. Literally the only game without Timmy Turner. But I did get the Invader Zim, which, if you're a fan of Nickelodeon in the 90s, Invader Zim was iconic. I've never watched the show, but a lot of people love Zim, and from what little I saw of him in that game, it's easy to see why. Moving on to the last section called Other Games I Love. This section is for games that don't really fit anywhere else, but there's also a couple more towards the end that relate more to Milla's Game Room as a channel, because I thought that was a fitting way to end it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. First bridge I want to cross though is a game I don't know physically, Rayman Legends. Now, what is Rayman Legends? This was the most recent Rayman game published by Ubisoft back in the early 2010s. It's unfortunately the most recent one. I really wish there were more after this, aside from the phone stuff and the crossovers, but Rayman is a franchise that is genuinely magic at times, and this was perfectly embodied within Rayman Legends. It has a short run time, but there's so many cool ideas crammed into it. It really embodies quality, not quantity. The rhythm game stages, the beautiful art style, really fantastic music, unique concepts, great execution, really fun, tight platforming with refined controls. I had a great time with it, and I still consider it my personal favourite non-Nintendo platformer. Only really stands up to Celeste in terms of competition, but I feel Celeste as an indie game doesn't really... I feel it's a little unfair to compare them, considering this is technically a AA game developed by a large company. But Rayman Legends is fantastic. You can get it on pretty much everything nowadays. The Nintendo Switch has the quote-unquote definitive edition, which is probably the best way to go if you can find it physically now, but Rayman is fantastic. Check out the series. I really hope one day Ubisoft actually decide to return to this franchise properly and make a new game. I think it's unlikely though, because Rabbids again is taking up all the runtime for them. Plus Mikael Ansel, despite his controversies, has left the company. He's left video games, so it's unlikely that anything will happen, which is a shame, but I still recommend Rayman. Check it out, it's fantastic. It changed my life. It cemented my love for really unique and magical platformer games that aren't Nintendo. Going back to a game I've talked about a bunch of times on the channel already, we have, and I'm not going to bother taking it out of the box, Cupid Parasite. Yep, this is my favourite romantic comedy Otome franchise, which I'm making a video on at the time, so I don't want to go into it too much here, other than to say, this is a light-hearted romantic comedy Otome game, which I didn't expect to like so much when it came out, as I usually prefer more plot-heavy games. This game blew me away. I was able to fully appreciate the slice-of-life heavy titles after playing this. This was so funny, so hilarious, so unique as well. It's a fantastic premise. You literally play as Cupid and you have to try not to find love as Cupid while trying to improve the dating lives of 5 undateable men. It's so funny and memorable as well. The art and music are amazing. I've got the art book and the soundtrack for the series now. It's just, oh, it's so fucking good. Please check it out. It's great. And after this, I began to play more slice of life, lighter romance titles, so things like Lover Pretend as well. That's another Otome game on the Switch, which I also liked as well. And even going to some Bishoujo games, like this year I played through Senran Banker, which is quite a light-hearted romance visual novel aimed at cishet men, which is good. Not as good as this, but still good. But it does have some fantastic music, which, yeah, I should make a visual novel Hidden Gems video at some point, even though I wouldn't call that Hidden Gem, but it is if you only play Otome games on consoles. Also worth adding, the fan disc Sweet and Spicy Darling is here. I recently finished that. I had a great time with that as well. These are 2 fantastic games that you owe it to yourself to check out, and I will keep fangirling about this until the end of time on my channel. So yeah, please check them out and look forward to the full video. Another game that I don't have physically, well actually no I do, it's the other way around. The next game's on top because I'm a clown. We have the SpongeBob SquarePants THQ developed games. Well, the SpongeBob SquarePants games developed by Heavy Iron Studios that were published by the original THQ. So no Nicktoons crossovers, no regrets here. Both this and the movie are really solid games developed by Heavy Iron Studios. Those games are beloved among platformer fans. Battle for Bikini Bottom is what gained an iconic status in the speedrunning community, which is why that game got remade, which I also recommend that as well. But SpongeBob the movie, I feel in some ways is better than Battle for Bikini Bottom. It took the formula that made Bikini Bottom so great, made the gameplay a bit shorter in terms of its overall runtime, but added more variety. So boss battles, the slide stages that are fully dedicated to just sliding, time trials, Krabby Patty levels. It's so awesome. It's fantastic for a licensed game, and it's really great. And given that the first SpongeBob movie is still arguably the best one, you really get to have a real nostalgia rush visiting this game. And I think it's great, and I'd love to see it properly re-released one day. I don't think it will get remade, given it is based on the first game, the first movie, and Nickelodeon, they don't care. They really don't give a shit about the old SpongeBob stuff for the most part, aside from rerunning it, so we probably won't get it remade, but I think it's fantastic. It really did raise the bar for licensed games too, and Battle for Bikini Bottom as well, because it goes to show that when you put the right time, money and resources in, you can make some fantastic licensed games, and this game is no exception. Next up is the final Western game of this video. Yeah, I'm really shocked there's as many Western games in this video. Well, if you're new here, be surprised. For me though, my last Western game on this list that changed my life is Portal 2. This is one of the earliest Western games I played on modern consoles. Its puzzles and humour are so memorable. If you've played this game, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to. It is such a unique sense of a personality in this little robotic world, which is part of the Half-Life universe, but you don't need to play any of the Half-Life games to understand this one. You just can jump straight in and enjoy yourself. And it's fantastic. I love the characters, the puzzles were fantastic. They really challenged your brain, and I really loved working them out. And there's even some world building for the world of Aperture Science. I really love that aspect of the game. It's just so fun and so awesome. I recommend this. It's actually on the Switch, believe it or not, as a download exclusive, so you can get it on Switch as well as PC nowadays, and I'd recommend it. If you haven't already got them, check them out, they're fantastic. I haven't actually played the first Portal yet, but I want to. It's like 3 hours long at some point, so I need to get around to it. I don't know why I've not done it sooner, but I'll get round to it at some point. The sequel is like a masterpiece compared to that game from what I've heard, but it's still good. I'd like a physical copy of the games on Switch. I don't know if that will happen because Valve, they don't need to. They can just print money selling elsewhere, but if they put it via limited run games, or even in Asia only, you'll get like thousands of copies of sales because collectors will buy it. That's reality, and you should, address and accept reality. This game changed my life because I was able to really start appreciating these puzzling, mind-bending games after playing this. And it's so memorable. The music's cool. I love the music so much as well. You can get it for free online, by the way. You can just go online and you can download it free straight from the official website, which is fantastic. So the final 2 games relate more to my channel as well as how they changed my life. And I'm going to start with a game where, if you know me, you know, why the hell hasn't she mentioned this game yet? Because I'm now going to mention it now. It is, of course, White Album 2. Da 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 da, who is surprised that this game is on a Milla's Game Room video? I swear, I reference that game in like almost all my videos in some way because it's absolutely iconic as far as I'm concerned. This is Aquaplus's flagship romance visual novel. Well, technically 2 Heart is the romance visual flagship, but in terms of god tier VNs coming from any visual novel developer, White Album 2 is it, especially in the West. This is a romantic love triangle visual novel where you play as Haruki and you basically have to choose either Setsuna or Kazusa. It's one of the best rated VNs of all time and it's my all-time favourite. This game left such a profound emotional impact on me that I've not really had with any game since, like across all genres, not just in VNs, but across the whole of video games. It's such a rich, character-driven VN with love drama that resembles British soaps. Like, that's one of the biggest takeaways I had from it. It reminded me so much of British television shows, which, if you've watched British TV, like Coronation Street, Emmerdale, things that are obviously staged, but feel so authentic because the voice acting, the environment is also fantastically done. It really does dive into some deep and complex subject matter about healthy relationships, mental illness. It's so relatable and it's so powerful that you remember about it long after I played it. At the time of this video, there isn't an official English release. You can play a full fan translation if you're over 18. Yeah, that's the only way you can play it. I expect an English release in the next couple of years. There's nothing explicitly confirmed, but Aquaplus have shown a desire to start releasing more of their legacy titles overseas. They brought over the first White Album game last year. They've also got the 2 Heart remake in the works, which is almost certainly going to get an English release. They also went back and re-released the Dungeon Travelers games, which, if you care about those, you probably haven't got the 2 and 2 because they're not on Steam, but I digress. It's so fantastic, and in terms of the channel, White Album 2 was one of the first videos I made about a game. And although it's not on my channel now because frankly it's an absolute shit video, I'm allowed to say that it's a shit video. I don't have it up anymore, but I would like to remake it once an official release happens because I have a lot to say on the game and I really want to do it justice because I feel no game or any visual novel could really make such a heavy impact on me again. And there are other games that have come close, like Persona 4, other games in this video, Radiant Historia, other visual novels too. I mean, Cupid Parasite made an impact on me, but not the same way. But Son and Null from earlier this year is also a new addition. That game's great too. I'm not sure, I really want to make that and make it a magnum opus. It really cemented my love for Aquaplus as a developer as well. Like, I played the Utaro games a few years ago before them, which when they came to consoles. However, it was really White Album 2 that fully cemented it. And I've got a lot of Aquaplus related content either planned or on the channel. So Aquaplus is a core pillar for my channel and it's partly because of my love for White Album 2. So that's the fangirling for White Album 2 out. Plus also the review I did even back then helped boost my confidence. So here I am making witty jokes in front of my camera to talk to you, if you're still watching after 50 minutes. Anyway, moving on to the final game, which is another related to the videos on my channel, which I do actually own physically, because this actually has an official American release. Not European though, I had to emulate this game, but I need to make a 1 hour and 15-minute video on this franchise. Well no, actually that's another company. Go watch that too. I'm talking about, of course, Growlancer. And I wanted to talk specifically about Growlancer 3, The Dual Darkness, as the final game, because this is the third game in the Growlancer series. It's also my favourite. I loved how its short but sweet nature really opened the way for a strategy RPG epic with a lot of political intrigue, a really unique battle system which I think is best done in this game across Growlancer games I've played. The music's fantastic, presentation's really memorable, I loved it so much, and it really helped encourage me to check out more of retro Atlas, as in Atlas stuff before I played Persona 4 Golden and before the 2010s, and they've got lots of stuff. Like, a lot of people have mostly only played Mega 10 and Persona, the modern stuff, the high school sim stuff, but older Atlas, including Growlancer, which is so forgotten and obscure, like people don't even know if the franchise exists. Like, until my video got like 16,000 views, and well, probably more than that by the time this goes up. It was one of my favourite videos on the channel, and I loved it, and it really helped expand Milla's game room. So now I have over 1,000 subs and can actually make money off this site as well, which is also really cool. So thank you so much to everyone who watched that video and all the other videos, because that's also one reason why I wanted to end the video on Growlancer 3, because this game helped change my life, because it encouraged me to help, well, keep making videos and retrospectives and build an audience and a little community of lovely people. So thank you so much for taking the time to check out my content and everything else going on, and give me a platform, no matter how small, to talk about video games and games that I love, and video game related issues as well. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna wrap up there now, because I need to edit this and get it online, because at the time of this video I haven't put a video up in almost a month, which is kind of bad, but at the same time I'd rather wait and do stuff. I've had a great August as well. I've been away in Italy. I recorded some footage as well, so if anyone wants to see me do a gaming travel vlog for that, let me know. I might do that. I don't know if I will, but if I can fit it in my schedule, maybe. Let me know in your comments below. And if you got to the end of this video and are still watching, leave me a comment below and tell me which one of the games I've talked about in this video is your personal favourite game. Of all the games here, can be anything I've mentioned. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know any other games that changed your life as well, even if you didn't make it to the end. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely day. Please like, comment, subscribe, consider becoming a channel member if you can afford to do so and want to. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.